Man, oh man, the coffee we can make at home these days, it's incredible. Like you can just whip up a fantastic cup of coffee almost like instantly, thanks to those single-serve brewers.
Right.
I mean, talk about convenient. It's a whole different world compared to like those old percolators we used to have.
Yeah, yeah, I remember those.
And speaking of a whole different world, that's what we're diving into today. The world of coffee pods.
It's a world of its own, for sure.
It really is. And to guide us through this deep dive, we've got a super insightful report here from Cognitive Market Research.
Oh, yeah, they do great work.
They do. This report is actually from January 28th of this year, just a couple of months ago, and they even updated it on April 7th.
So it's really fresh, right off the press.
Super fresh. And it's packed with info on this booming coffee pod market. Now, for any of our listeners who might be new to this whole thing, what exactly are coffee pods?
Well, they're those little single-serve capsules, designed for machines like Keurig and Nespresso.
Yeah.
Super convenient. They've really changed how a lot of people get their daily coffee.
Totally. And our goal today is to pull out the most interesting, the most relevant bits from this report for you. We want to understand the big trends and see where this whole market is going. So where do we even begin? What's the state of the coffee pod market right now?
Well, the report makes it clear that coffee pods, this isn't just a passing fad. It's a big part of the coffee industry now, and it's growing significantly.
I can believe that. Seems like everyone has a pod machine these days.
Yeah. I think a lot of that growth is coming from people wanting convenience, but they still want a quality cup of coffee.
Hmm?
They don't want to sacrifice taste.
Right, right. Like we're all busy, we want things fast, but we still appreciate good coffee.
Exactly. And in 2024, the global market for coffee pods reached, get this, about 39,524.5 US dollars.
Wow. $39 billion.
That's what the report says.
That's massive. Okay, so it's huge right now. But it doesn't sound like it's slowing down at all.
Not even close.
Huh?
Projections show that by 2032, that number is expected to jump even higher to a whopping 62,996.0 million USD.
Okay, wait. So basically, from nearly 40 billion to over 60 billion in less than 10 years.
Yeah, and that works out to a CAGR, a compound annual growth rate, of 6%.
6%. Okay, so this market is on a roll. So what's driving all this growth? What's making coffee pods so popular?
A bunch of things, actually. And like we were saying, a lot of it is that people want to make good coffee at home.
Makes sense. It's comfy.
It is. And then you have, like, more and more people using single-serve machines both at home and in the office.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've definitely seen those popping up everywhere.
And then there's a big push for eco-friendly options. People want those.
Hmm.
And, of course, there are folks who are really into, like, specialty coffee and stuff. They want those unique experiences, even in a pod.
Yeah. It seems like coffee pods are trying to keep up with all the latest coffee trends.
Oh, they are. They're evolving. So let's talk about some of those specific trends, like what's really changing the coffee pod landscape right now.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Well, you hit the nail on the head earlier, convenience. The report highlights how much consumers want that,
Yeah.
especially in cities where life is so fast-paced.
Right. Everyone's running around needing their coffee fix.
And they need it quick. But here's the thing. It's not just any coffee anymore. We're seeing more pods with specialty and organic coffee. It's like those pods are trying to appeal to the coffee snobs out there, too.
The coffee snobs.
Well, the folks who are like really into the specific flavors and origins and all that. Like, imagine having a single origin coffee from a specific farm.
Oh, yeah. Like those fancy bags of beans you see.
Exactly. And now you can get that kind of experience in a pod.
Yeah.
There's like curated coffee, but with a push of a button.
That's pretty impressive. But what about the environment? I know a lot of people worry about all the waste from pods.
That's a great point, and it's one of the biggest trends we're seeing, the rise of recyclable and biodegradable pods. People want sustainable options. It's becoming a must-have.
That's good to hear. Okay, so we've talked trends, but what about location? Where in the world are coffee pods most popular? Like, is there a coffee pod capital of the world?
Well, I don't know about a capital, but as of 2024, North America has the biggest share of the global market. It's about 35%.
North America makes sense. I feel like we're always on the go here.
Yeah, and North America also has a big culture of, premium coffee. And those single-serve machines, they're everywhere in homes and offices.
Makes sense. Okay, so North America is leading the pack. Who comes next?
Europe is number 2 at about 30% of the market. And within Europe, the big players are Germany, France, and the UK.
I can see that. Those are all big coffee drinking countries. What about like the rest of the world? Any surprises?
The Asia-Pacific region is where things are really taking off. Growth there is super fast, especially in China and Japan.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
Well, coffee culture is really catching on in those places, especially in cities. And as more people in those urban areas are getting into coffee, they're also getting those single-serve machines.
So they're jumping right into the coffee pod trend.
Exactly. And get this. The report projects that the Asia-Pacific region will see a PGR of 8% through 2025.
8%. That's even faster than the global average we talked about earlier.
Way faster. It's a really dynamic market over there. And it's something to watch, like for our listeners, this could mean that the next big thing in coffee, the next flavor, the next brewing style could come from that region.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. So Asia Pacific is at 8% growth. What's their actual market share right now, and what's it projected to be next year?
So in 2024, they had about 20% of the global market. And they're projected to grab around 23% by 2025.
Wow, almost a quarter of the entire market.
And that 9% jump from this year to next year, that's all because of the growing love for premium coffee in those urban areas, the report says.
Okay, that makes sense. So now let's move on to the companies behind these pods. Who are the big names? Like, who's making all these pods?
Well, the market is kind of dominated by a few major players. You've got Keurig, Dr. Pepper Inc. They had the largest share in 2024 at around 15%.
Keurig. Yeah, that's a name everyone knows.
Right. Then there's Nestlé SA. They were at about 13%.
Wow, espresso. Yeah, another huge one.
Huge. And then the Kraft Heinz company, they had around 10%.
So those three companies have a big chunk of the market.
A big chunk. And it makes sense. They're big brands that people already know and trust. They've got lots of different products, and they're always working on new stuff. They invest a ton in R&D, trying to make their pods and their machines better.
So they're not just sitting back and letting the market come to them.
No way. They're competing for sure. And the report mentions that we might see some changes in the market by 2025. More competition is coming, and there's a big focus on sustainability and premium eco-friendly pods.
It does seem like that's where things are headed.
Definitely. So those big companies, they'll need to adapt. And it might also open the door for some smaller companies to come in and focus on those specific needs.
It's always good to have more options. So let's talk about the actual pods. What kind of pods are people choosing? Like Keurig versus Nespresso or...
Good question. As of 2024, the single-serve systems like, Keurig and Nespresso, those are the most popular by far. They've got about 50% of the market share.
Half the market. Wow.
It shows how many people are hooked on that way of brewing coffee. It's become a habit.
It's so easy. But, we talked about sustainability earlier. So are people starting to choose those eco-friendly pods more?
They are. It's not the majority yet, but it's a growing trend.
Yeah.
More and more people are thinking about the environment when they buy their pods.
That's great. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk tech. Like, what kind of innovations and advancements are happening in the coffee pod world? It can't just be about, like, new flavors of coffee, right?
You're right. It's not just about the coffee. Technology plays a huge role in making those single-serve systems more convenient and improving the quality of the coffee itself. And it's happening on a few different levels. First, you have the machines themselves. They're always getting redesigned, adding new features, making them easier to use, things like that.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty fancy machines out there.
Right. But then you have the pods themselves, and that's where it gets really interesting, like we were talking about those specialty coffees. To get those unique flavors in a tiny pod, that takes some serious technology.
Oh, for sure. Like, it's not just stuffing coffee grounds in there.
Nope. They have to figure out how to preserve the freshness, how to extract the flavors perfectly, all within that little capsule. It's like a science experiment in there.
It's a good way to put it. And I'm guessing that this push for eco-friendly options is also driving some pretty cool innovations.
Oh, absolutely. The search for biodegradable and recyclable pod materials is a huge area of research right now. Big companies like Nestlé and Keurig Dr. Pepper, they're pouring tons of money into this.
So they're really trying to make pods more sustainable.
Yeah. They see the consumers want it, and they want to be the ones who figure it out. And it's not just about the materials either. They're also working on the design of the pods themselves, like better seals to keep the coffee fresh and new ways to control the pressure inside the pod during brewing.
That's amazing. So it's really a high-tech operation, even for something as seemingly simple as a coffee pod.
It is. They're really trying to fine-tune that whole single-serve experience.
So with all this innovation, where are the big opportunities for growth in the future? Like, where is this market headed?
I think one of the biggest opportunities is in those eco-friendly pods. We've talked about how much consumers want them. So the companies that can make those pods really well and make them affordable, those are the ones that will really succeed.
So it's not just about being green. Those eco-friendly pods have to taste good too.
Exactly. That's the key. People won't sacrifice taste, even for the environment. So figuring out how to get the best flavor from sustainable materials, that's huge.
It sounds like quite a challenge.
It is. And then there's the whole area of premium coffee. People want more variety, more unique flavors. So that's another area where companies can really innovate and grow.
Like those single origin pods we were talking about earlier.
Yep. But let's not forget the basics. Convenience is still a major driver for this market. That's what made coffee pods popular in the first place.
Right, right. And you mentioned earlier that they're used a lot in offices and places like that.
Yeah, the commercial sector. It's a big part of the market, and it's growing. In 2024, it made up about 15% of total revenue, and they're predicting even more growth in the coming years.
So those little pods are taking over the workplace too.
Seems like it. And there are companies specifically targeting that market. Like in November 2024, Victor Allen's launched those high-quality premium coffee pods. It's a big pack, 60 pods, with lots of variety.
60 pods, that's a lot of coffee.
It is. But it makes sense for offices, right? And they're designed to work with most single-serve machines. So it's all about that convenience and having high-quality options even in a workplace setting.
So they're really catering to that demand for both quality and ease.
Exactly. So there's a lot of potential in the coffee pod market. But there must be some challenges too, right? Like, it can't all be rainbows and lattes.
Yeah, there are always obstacles. What are some of the things that are holding the market back?
Well, the elephant in the room is the environmental impact of those traditional pods,
Yeah.
the ones that aren't recyclable or biodegradable. We make so many of them, and they create a lot of waste.
It's a valid concern.
It is. And while companies are working on eco-friendly options, those are often more expensive to make.
So it's a cost issue.
Yeah, if those eco-friendly pods cost a lot more, some people might not buy them. And in general, those premium pods, the ones with special flavors and stuff, those can be pricey too.
So finding a balance between sustainability and affordability is key.
It's a tricky balance. And then, of course, there's the constant competition. To stay ahead, companies have to keep innovating, which means spending more on R&D.
So it's a constant pressure to stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. So, to wrap up our deep dive into this fascinating market, what can we expect to see happening with coffee pods in the future?
That's the big question. Give us the inside scoop.
Well, one thing is for sure. The market will continue to grow. That's driven by all the technology and innovation we've talked about.
So we'll see even more new pods and machines.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think we'll see huge progress on the sustainability front. We'll see pods made from materials that are fully compostable or super easy to recycle. And they'll get better at making those eco-friendly pods taste amazing.
That would be incredible.
In the design of the pods themselves, that'll keep evolving too. They'll find ways to make those seals even better, and they'll keep tweaking how the water flows through the pod to get the perfect extraction.
So the focus on improving the brewing process within the pod itself will continue.
Absolutely. It's all about maximizing flavor. But it's not just about the pods. I think we'll also see changes in how we buy coffee pods. Like those subscription services that are personalized to your taste, those might become even more popular.
So like a curated coffee pod experience delivered to your door.
Exactly. And geographically, we'll probably see a lot more growth in places like Asia Pacific and Latin America as those regions become more urbanized and people's tastes evolve.
So it's a global trend that's spreading.
For sure.
So, okay, we've covered a ton of ground today. For our listeners who maybe tuned in late or just need a quick recap, what are the key takeaways from this report?
All right. So the big picture is that the coffee pod market is doing really well and it's growing fast. That's because people love the convenience, they want good quality coffee, and they're becoming more and more focused on sustainability.
And that growth is happening all over the world, though some regions are definitely ahead of others.
Yep. And right now there are a few big companies that are kind of leading the pack, but there's room for new players to come in, especially those who can meet the demand for eco-friendly and premium options.
And while there are challenges, like the environmental impact of traditional pods and the cost of those newer, more sustainable ones, it sounds like there are also a ton of exciting opportunities for innovation.
Absolutely. There's a lot happening in this market. It's dynamic, it's constantly changing, and it's driven by what consumers want. Delicious, ethical coffee made easy.
That's a great summary. But before we go, I have a final thought for our listeners, something to ponder as you enjoy your next cup of joe. So, with all this amazing technology and innovation, and knowing that we all want things to be super convenient and eco friendly, what if in the next 10 years, the whole idea of a coffee pod changes completely?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this.
Like, what if we move beyond the current materials, beyond those little capsules? What if there are totally new ways to deliver that single serve coffee experience, ways we haven't even imagined yet?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. It'll be fascinating to see how this market unfolds.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, happy brewing.